What do you mean? Now Mark is the boss. I'm the one who saved this hotel. My voice echoed through the newly renovated lobby, bouncing off the walls adorned with modern decor inspired by the mountains. A decor I spent months perfecting. My mom's dismissive gesture hit me like a slap. Emma, your brother just has that natural knack for leadership. You worry too much about every little detail, she said, as if I were still a child. And then Mark walked in, hands in his pockets, with that smug smile I hadn't seen since we were little. Hey sis, don't take it personally. Someone's got to handle the day-to-day while I focus on the big picture. My name is Emma Thompson, and at 52, I never expected to have to fight for recognition in our family business. After 20 successful years managing hotels in Chicago, I left it all behind to return to my hometown and rescue our struggling family hotel. The irony was that I was the only one with real hospitality experience, while my younger brother Mark bounced from one job to the next without ever really settling. And that's where all my bitterness began. 8 months ago, my dad called me in tears, saying we were only weeks away from bankruptcy. Without a second thought, I sold my apartment in Chicago, cashed in all my savings, and came home to help. The hotel was stuck in a time warp. Outdated decor, no social media presence, and online reviews that made you cringe. I worked day and night modernizing everything, from the reservation system to the lobby furniture. I spent countless nights hunched over spreadsheets, negotiating with suppliers, and training the staff. I even used my industry contacts to get us featured in travel magazines, and it worked. The Mountain View Hotel went from being a 2-star disaster to the talk of the town. Our bookings doubled, and for the first time in years, we turned a profit. Every detail, from the local artwork to the upgraded amenities, was carefully chosen to create an unforgettable guest experience. Yet now, watching Mark smirk as our parents hand him everything I'd built, I realized none of it matters to them. The worst part is that today at the staff meeting where I was supposed to present our record-breaking results, they're announcing his promotion. I felt every employee's eyes on me, especially those of Mrs. Davis, our longtime head of housekeeping. Everyone knew who really turned the hotel around, but like me, they were forced to watch this sham, pretending that it was normal, that it was fair. Let me take you back to where it all began. The Mountain View Hotel has been in our family since my grandparents built it back in 1971. I practically grew up there, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. While other kids played house, I was helping my mom with check-ins and watching my dad handle maintenance issues. The hotel was my second home, and I loved every minute of it. But Mark, 3 years my junior, never showed any real interest in the family business. While I pursued a degree in hospitality, he jumped from one major to another, first architecture, then business, until he eventually dropped out to find himself. My parents never really worried. They'd always say he was creative and needed time. Meanwhile, I was building my career in Chicago, starting as a front desk clerk and eventually rising to regional director for a major hotel chain. Every success of mine was met with, "That's nice, dear, but when are you coming home? When will you settle down?" Never enough for them. When my dad called about the hotel's financial troubles, I knew exactly what needed to be done. The business was hemorrhaging money due to outdated systems, inefficient processes, no real marketing strategy, and brutal online reviews. It broke my heart to see our family legacy crumbling. So I took a leave, soon turning into a resignation, from my job in Chicago and threw myself into the rescue mission. The first month was all about damage control, fixing broken equipment, updating the booking system, and training the staff on basic customer service. I even dipped into my savings to replace the old carpeting and give the lobby a fresh look. Every penny was calculated to maximize returns. What really got under my skin was that Mark wasn't even there during all this. He claimed he was out networking in another city, but in reality, he was off partying with friends. He would show up occasionally at family dinners, throw out a few vague ideas about modernizing, and then vanish. Yet somehow, to our parents, his occasional input was just as valuable as my daily grind. I kept telling myself that once they saw the results, the improved ratings, increased bookings, and positive reviews, they'd finally recognize my worth. I was wrong. The past 3 weeks have been a nightmare. Mark strutted around the hotel like he owned it, making changes without understanding how a hotel actually works. Just yesterday, he decided to cut the continental breakfast to save a few bucks, completely oblivious to the fact that it was one of our biggest selling points. When I tried to show him the guest satisfaction data, he just laughed and said, "Numbers don't tell the whole story, sis." But what truly pushed me over the edge happened this morning. I walked in and found him firing Mrs. Jenkins, our head of housekeeping who'd been with us for 15 years, simply because she couldn't adapt to his new scheduling system, a system that would have left us dangerously understaffed during peak hours. I managed to step in and save her job, but the look of humiliation in her eyes will haunt me for a long time. I tried to talk to my parents about what happened. I brought spreadsheets showing our progress, guest reviews praising our recent improvements, and even financial projections for the next quarter. My dad barely looked up from his cup of coffee, while my mom, in her familiar soft tone, said, "Emma, you need to give Mark some time to get his act together. He's got great ideas." That's when I noticed a for sale sign on the old Riverside Hotel. Driving home, I realized that property, which had once been our biggest competitor before falling into disrepair, had enormous potential. Better views than our hotel, closer proximity to the ski slopes, and a much larger spa. Sure, it needed work, but I knew exactly what to do. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, recalling every time my parents overlooked my achievements in favor of Mark. Every idea I had dismissed. Something inside me snapped, or maybe it was just the moment I needed. I called my agent right then in the parking lot. The owners were eager to sell, and thanks to my savings and solid credit, I could make it happen. By the time I got home, I had already scheduled a viewing for the next morning. For the first time in months, I felt energized and excited. I wasn't going to watch Mark destroy everything I'd worked so hard to build. Instead, I was going to create something entirely my own to show them what they lost by choosing him. The next few months flew by. I poured everything into transforming the old Riverside Hotel into something extraordinary, while Mark spent his time throwing parties at the Mountain View Hotel. I worked with contractors, redesigned the spaces, and built a team of top-notch hospitality professionals. I named my new project The Outlook, a simple name that said exactly what I aimed for. Word spread quickly. Some said I was acting out of spite, competing against my own family, but others, especially former employees of the Mountain View Hotel, quietly cheered me on. At first, my parents tried to make me feel guilty, asking at the rare family dinners, "How can you do this to your brother?" I would just smile and change the subject. Meanwhile, Mark's poor management began to take its toll on the Mountain View Hotel. Reviews dropped, guests complained about inconsistent service, maintenance issues, and even cleanliness. Within just 1 month, 3 longtime employees resigned. I heard whispers that they had even slashed prices just to keep the hotel full. The grand opening of the Outlook came exactly 6 months after that fateful day. I will never forget the expressions on my family's faces when they walked in. My mom's forced smile, barely hiding her shock, my dad's wide-eyed amazement as he took in the packed lobby, and Mark's barely concealed anger. The local paper was there, snapping photos and interviewing guests about the newest luxury spot in town. "You're trying to destroy us," Mark hissed when he cornered me by the bar. "This is a direct attack on our family." I just smiled and replied, "No, Mark. This is me succeeding despite the family." The contrast was clear. While the Mountain View Hotel was struggling just to keep up, the Outlook was making waves with its eco-friendly initiatives and luxurious amenities. Every detail I'd always wanted to implement in our family hotel, but which was always shot down, was now a reality, from the locally sourced restaurant to the state-of-the-art spa. Of course, success brought new challenges too. Other hotels began copying our innovative reservation system, and soon some neighbors, friends of my parents, started saying I was tearing the family apart. Even some loyal guests of the Mountain View Hotel felt guilty for picking sides. As the Outlook gained momentum, my old suppliers began to face pressure not to work with me. My mom's circle of friends turned against me, and even longtime buddies started avoiding our coffee meetups. I even lost my spot on the local tourism board, citing a conflict of interest. But I wasn't going to let small-town politics ruin everything I'd built. When one supplier hesitated, I found another in a nearby city. After being dropped from the board, I focused on forming direct partnerships with ski tour operators. Every setback only made me more determined and creative. Then came the toughest test. One morning, my parents came to my office, worried. The bank was threatening to call on the loans for the Mountain View Hotel because Mark's mismanagement had finally caught up with them. They wanted me to come back, not as CEO, of course, but to help Mark get his act together. "We're family," my mom pleaded. "You can't let the hotel fail." I looked at them, seated across from my desk in the office I'd built with my own hands, and I felt an odd calm. I left my life in Chicago to save the Mountain View Hotel. You chose Mark, and now you have to live with that decision. My dad tried to appeal, saying, "Think about your grandfather's legacy. This hotel has been in our family for generations." I shot back. "You handed it over to someone who treats it like his playground." From that moment on, the gossip around town intensified. I became known as the ungrateful daughter, the bitter sister, the woman who turned against her own family out of spite. Sometimes those rumors hurt more than I'd like to admit, but every time I walked into the Outlook and saw my vision come alive, I knew I had made the right choice. My team became my new family, many of them former employees of the Mountain View Hotel who were fed up with Mark's chaotic management. They understood that what I was building wasn't about revenge. It was about creating something valuable, something we could all be proud of. The turning point came during the Regional Hospitality Awards. The Outlook was nominated for Best New Boutique Hotel, while the Mountain View Hotel wasn't even mentioned. I sat in the auditorium, surrounded by my team, when our win was announced. As I walked onto the stage, I caught sight of my parents sitting at the back. They had come unexpectedly, probably expecting to support the family hotel as they always had. Their faces said it all. My mom was holding back tears, and my dad looked as if he had aged 10 years. Mark wasn't there. He had stopped showing up at industry events months ago, claiming they were just popularity contests. But everyone knew what that moment meant. The student had outshined the teacher. In my acceptance speech, I thanked my team, the guests, and even mentioned the Mountain View Hotel, the place where I first fell in love with hospitality. The uneasy shifting in the room showed that everyone caught my subtle jab, but it was the conversation that followed that changed everything. A well-known travel magazine editor approached me for an interview. As we talked about the Outlook's success, my parents stayed nearby, listening to every word. They heard how being overlooked for the top spot had motivated me to forge my own path. "Sometimes the greatest successes come from being underestimated," I said, loud enough for everyone, including them, to hear. That evening, the editor told me that the magazine was naming the Outlook the best boutique hotel in the region, and that a special feature would cover how traditional hotels are struggling to adapt, using the Mountain View Hotel as an example. When the article came out, it was like a bomb had gone off in our small town. Everyone who had said I was vindictive had to face the truth. While the Mountain View Hotel was collapsing under its own mistakes, I had built something extraordinary. Looking back, I can't help but feel a mix of emotions. Part of me still hurts from the way my parents treated me, ignoring all I'd done as if it meant nothing. But overall, I feel free, finally living life on my own terms, without needing anyone's approval. Every morning, as I walk into the Outlook, I'm reminded of what I built with my own two hands. The lobby buzzes with life. Guests chat happily about their plans for the day. The staff works with genuine smiles, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee blends with the crisp air streaming in through the large doors. It's exactly what I always dreamed for the Mountain View Hotel, and seeing the Outlook thrive fills me with pride. Many of my team members, like Mrs. Davis and Karen, former employees who left because they saw the lack of proper leadership, have been instrumental to the success of my new venture, and their loyalty moves me deeply. Mrs. Davis often jokes that she finally feels appreciated, and I understand perfectly what she means. Outside of work, I've reconnected with old friends I had neglected. For years, I was so focused on proving my worth to my parents that I let important relationships slip away. Now, I made time to grab a coffee or go for a walk, rebuilding those connections. Even neighbors who once criticized my decision to compete with the family have come to admire what I've accomplished. I've also found my place in the community again, Organizing events at the Outlook helped me reconnect with old acquaintances and make new friends. Last month, we organized a fundraiser for a local animal shelter, and it was a huge success. Seeing people come together for a good cause reminded me why I chose hospitality: to create places that bring joy and comfort. Of course, not everything is perfect. Sometimes in the quiet evenings, I think about my parents and about Mark, and despite all the pain they've caused me, I wish things could have been different. I wonder if they ever truly understood the sacrifices I made to save our family legacy. But gradually, I've realized I don't need their approval. My success, my happiness, they're mine, and no one can take that away from me. For so long, I lived in the shadow of others' expectations, but now, at last, I'm shining on my own. 3 weeks after the awards ceremony, my parents invited me to dinner, just the three of us. I hesitated for a moment, but then decided to go. I wanted to hear what they had to say, even though I didn't expect genuine apologies. When I arrived, I could feel the atmosphere was different. My mom greeted me with a nervous smile, and my dad avoided my gaze, fiddling with his watch as he usually did when he felt uncomfortable. During dinner, they started by talking about trivial things: the unusually warm weather, the praise for the latest 5-star review of the Outlook. I knew they were gearing up for something. Finally, my dad cleared his throat and said, "Emma, we want you to know that we're proud of what you've achieved." My mom immediately added, "We know we haven't always shown it, but we really appreciate all the hard work you've put into the Outlook. It's amazing." I wished I could feel happy about those words, but they sounded too little, too late after all these years of neglect. I just nodded, waiting for what would come next. And sure enough, my mom continued, "Mark is having serious problems. His hotel isn't doing well, and he's overwhelmed. We thought maybe you could help him, guide him to get things back on track." I fell silent, letting her words hang in the air as I looked at her. My mom, with her perfectly manicured nails clutching her wine glass, and my dad, staring at the tablecloth as if the answers were written there. In a calm but firm voice, I said, "I left my life in Chicago to save the Mountain View Hotel. You chose Mark knowing he wasn't ready, and that I had the experience to fix things. You never wanted me to lead, and now that everything is falling apart, you expect me to repair what he's destroyed. I'm sorry, but I can't do that." My mom tried to argue, but I raised my hand to stop her. I can offer advice, recommend strategies, suppliers, even training programs for the staff, but I'm not coming back to fix the mess Mark made. That's no longer my responsibility. They didn't know what to say. My dad mumbled something about understanding my position, but the disappointment on his face said it all. My mom seemed like she wanted to push further, but for the first time, she fell silent. That evening, as I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Setting those boundaries wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I wasn't going to bend over backwards to please my parents or clean up Mark's messes anymore. I chose myself, my happiness, and my future. In the weeks that followed, I noticed a change in how I carried myself. Saying no to my parents gave me the confidence to set limits in other areas of my life too. I stopped over-explaining every decision, whether at work or in my personal life, and started focusing only on relationships that truly brought me joy and support. At the Outlook, we reached new heights. Our occupancy rate soared to the highest in the region, and soon other boutique hotel owners began consulting with me. Meanwhile, the Mountain View Hotel continued to crumble. I learned they had finally hired a professional consultant to try and turn things around. Mark and I barely spoke after that, and honestly, that made me feel at peace. He never apologized or admitted his mistakes, but I no longer needed him. His bitterness became a burden he had to bear on his own, not mine. The Outlook became a reflection of everything I had fought for: my perseverance, my vision, my independence. And as the hotel flourished, so did I. One morning, standing in the lobby of the Outlook, I watched the sunlight pour in through the enormous windows, bathing the modern design I had created in warm light. A family passed by, laughing and discussing their plans for the day, while one of my employees confidently handed out a schedule for a snowy hike. In that moment, I realized just how far I had come, not only professionally but also personally. For years, I measure my worth by seeking my parents' approval and recognition of my efforts. Now I understood that I didn't need that. What I built here isn't just a hotel. It's a testament to my perseverance, creativity, and my ability to succeed despite all obstacles. The journey was tough. Letting go of the hope that my family would change hurt, but it also set me free. I no longer feel weighed down by expectations or past dismissals. Instead, I feel proud of what I've accomplished, proud of my team, and proud of the life I've chosen to live. I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. The industry events I once only dreamed about became my reality. The room was buzzing with energy, filled with professionals, journalists, and hotel owners from across the region. When the nominees for Best Boutique Hotel of the Year were announced, I saw my parents sitting discreetly at the back, their faces full of meaning. When the Outlook was declared the winner, the room erupted in applause. My team celebrated as I walked onto the stage, my heart pounding with every step. I glanced at my parents. My dad gave a slight nod, and my mom's eyes shone, almost on the verge of tears. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was a sign of recognition, something I no longer expected, yet still deeply appreciated. After the ceremony, I celebrated with my team. My parents didn't come over, and I didn't seek them out. It was my moment, and I wanted to share it with those who had helped me get here. I felt completely free from needing their approval, free from the shadows of their choices. Success was no longer about proving them wrong, but about proving to myself that I am capable, deserving, and enough. As I raised a glass with my team that night, I knew that at last I had found peace.